Having served as a paramedic for the Seattle Fire Department for 11 years, my professional journey began 4 years prior as an EMT basic with King County Medic 1. I ascended through the ranks, a common trajectory in emergency medicine. Over the years, I've answered thousands of emergency calls, from cardiac arrests in grocery aisles to multi-vehicle collisions on I-5, overdoses in downtown alleyways, and even structure fires with individuals trapped inside. My experiences include performing CPR on children, delivering babies in unexpected places like taxis, and offering comfort to dying gunshot victims while awaiting scene security. Within this demanding profession, we cultivate what is known as selective emotional detachment. It's a mechanism for compartmentalizing trauma, deferring the processing of horror until later, if at all, to focus intently on the immediate objective of saving lives. One must master crucial, rapid decision-making while retaining enough empathy to reassure terrified patients and their families. The role demands a blend of technical proficiency, physical stamina, and psychological fortitude that few can sustain long-term. The typical career span for a paramedic before burnout compels them to seek alternative employment is a mere 5 to 7 years. I represent those who have endured, not from superior resilience or dedication, but because I discovered a profound purpose amidst the chaos. Each shift brings a new set of challenges, every call a life or death enigma. This constant variation, the continuous engagement with the unpredictable, has consistently drawn me back, even during times when the cumulative weight of what I witnessed threatened to overwhelm me. However, October 3, 2021, fundamentally altered my perception of my profession, my city, and the very boundary between the comprehensible and the incomprehensible. The events of that night didn't merely unsettle me professionally. They shattered deeply ingrained assumptions about reality that had formed the bedrock of my entire career. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I feel compelled to share what we encountered in Medic 1, Unit 47 that night. It's crucial for someone to acknowledge the reality of our experience, even if I remain unable to fully explain it. The shift commenced without incident. I reported for duty at Seattle Fire Station 10 in Capitol Hill at 6 p.m., a routine I had followed countless times before. My partner for the evening was James Chen, a paramedic with 7 years of experience, with whom I had regularly collaborated for the past 2 years. James was exceptionally methodical, unflappable under pressure, and possessed an almost eidetic memory for protocols and drug dosages. We made an effective team. I tended to perceive people and situations instinctively, whereas James approached every call with systematic precision. We adhered to our standard pre-shift equipment inspection, confirming the functionality and proper stocking of every item. Oxygen tanks full, batteries charged, medications within expiration dates, and all fluids at appropriate levels. James religiously completed his 23-point checklist, irrespective of the departing crew's report. By 6:45 p.m., we were cleared and ready for assignments. We handled several standard calls, a COPD exacerbation, and a remarkably successful cardiac arrest resuscitation at Volunteer Park, where we revived a 52-year-old man after 23 minutes of CPR. By 11:42 p.m., we were released from a staging area during a tactical situation and cleared for routine calls. James was driving us back toward Station 10 when dispatch issued an urgent alert. Medic 10, respond to the Seattle Center Space Needle area. Injured person. Bystanders reporting a fall from height. This immediately captured our attention. Plunges from significant elevations typically trigger trauma alerts, indicating severe injuries that necessitate the highest level of emergency response. James activated the lights and sirens, and we swiftly headed towards the Seattle Center. Medic 10 to dispatch. Can you confirm the location? Are we responding to the Space Needle observation deck? I queried. Negative, Medic 10. The caller reports the incident occurred in the parking garage adjacent to the Space Needle, northwest corner, 3rd or 4th floor level. We arrived at 11:53 p.m. A security guard was awaiting us at the entrance, a young man in his mid-20s, his uniform appearing a couple of sizes too large. He was visibly agitated, his face pallid beneath the harsh sodium lights of the garage. "Up here," he managed, his voice slightly unsteady. "4th floor, northwest corner. I don't know if he's alive." We followed the security guard up the vehicle ramp. The 4th floor was dimly illuminated, with half of the overhead lights either burnt out or intentionally switched off to conserve energy. "I was doing my rounds," he stammered nervously, words spilling out. "I heard this sound, like an impact, something heavy hitting concrete. I came around the corner and saw him lying there, not moving. I called 911 immediately, but I was afraid to touch him in case, spinal injury or whatever." "You did the right thing," I assured him. "Where is he?" The guard paused, looking bewildered. He gestured towards a section of concrete floor approximately 20 feet ahead, near the garage's exterior wall. "He was right there. I swear he was right there." James and I exchanged perplexed glances. The indicated area was empty. No person, no blood, no discernible signs of trauma whatsoever. "Are you certain this is the exact spot?" James inquired, his tone professional, yet tinged with skepticism. "Absolutely positive. I stood right here, shone my light on him. He was wearing a dark jacket, jeans, lying on his side. I could see his face. He looked maybe 30, brown hair, some kind of tattoo on his neck. He wasn't moving, wasn't responding when I called out to him." I swept my flashlight across the concrete floor, meticulously examining the area. Nothing. No bloodstains, no scuff marks, no evidence that anyone had been lying there. "How much time elapsed between when you observed him and our arrival?" James asked. A guard checked his watch. "Maybe 15 minutes. I called 911 at 11:37. I stayed here, keeping an eye on him while I waited for you." I glanced away for perhaps 30 seconds when I went to the ramp entrance to watch for your ambulance, and when I returned, he was gone. After 20 painstaking minutes of searching, we had to acknowledge the inescapable truth. There was no patient. Whatever the security guard had seen, or believed he had seen, no one here required medical attention. "Medic 10 to dispatch," James radioed. "We've conducted a thorough search of the scene. No patient found. Possible unfounded call or patient self-ambulatory prior to our arrival." We cleared the scene at 12:31 a.m. As James navigated the ambulance out of the parking garage, I felt an unsettling unease that I struggled to articulate. The entire situation felt profoundly wrong. Not merely the missing patient, but the very atmosphere of that 4th floor, the peculiar silence, the unnaturally deep shadows. We responded to 2 additional calls, a case of appendicitis and an intoxicated driver with a forehead laceration who declined transport. By 3:35 a.m., we were making our way back to Station 10. The city was hushed at this hour, a liminal period between late-night revelers heading home and early-morning commuters beginning their day. We were heading southbound on Fairview Avenue when dispatch delivered an alert with a tone I had never encountered before. The dispatcher's voice was strained, controlled, yet with an underlying tremor of what could only have been profound concern. All units, be advised, we have a report of a stolen ambulance. King County Medic 1 Unit 47 was taken from Harborview Medical Center approximately 3:20 a.m. Vehicle was left running while crew was inside delivering a patient. Vehicle has GPS tracking. Last known location shows it's stationary at Discovery Park, lower lot area. James and I exchanged stunned glances. Ambulance thefts were extraordinarily rare, perhaps 1 or 2 incidents nationwide each year. At 3:47 a.m., dispatch provided an update. All units, SPD has located Medic 1, Unit 47, at Discovery Park, lower lot. Vehicle is unoccupied. No suspects on scene. A few minutes later, the call came. Medic 10, respond to Discovery Park lower. Meet with SPD. Possible medical emergency. Details to follow. We arrived at Discovery Park at 4:03 a.m. 4 police vehicles were already on site, their lights casting pulsating patterns across the trees. The stolen ambulance, Medic 1, Unit 47, stood centrally in the lot, engine idling, headlights illuminating the scene. A Seattle police sergeant approached us as we parked. Her name tag read Martinez, and she exuded the weariness common to all night shift officers after years of graveyard shifts. "Thanks for coming," she said. "We need you to check out the ambulance before we process it. Something's not right, and I want medical personnel to clear it before my officers go inside." "What do you mean, not right?" James queried. Sergeant Martinez hesitated, meticulously selecting her words. My officers looked through the windows. There's something on the gurney in the back. It looks like a person, but it's not moving, not responding to light or noise. We can't tell if it's a patient, a training mannequin, or something else. And there's equipment that appears to be running. Monitors, maybe oxygen. But no one's responding when we call out. I grabbed our flashlights, and James and I approached the ambulance. I peered through the rear door windows, using my flashlight to illuminate the patient compartment. What I witnessed defied immediate comprehension. The gurney was in its deployed position, safety straps securely fastened. Someone, or something, lay upon it, completely covered from head to toe with a white sheet. The cardiac monitor was active, displaying a rhythm. 1V bags hung from the poles, lines disappearing beneath the sheet. The pulse oximeter emitted a steady beep. Oxygen was flowing. I could distinctly hear its soft hiss through the door. "There's a patient in there," I declared. "All the equipment is running, as if someone is actively being treated." "But who's treating them?" Sergeant Martinez pressed. "The crew from Unit 47 is back at Harborview. They reported the rig stolen immediately. There's no paramedic in there." One of the officers successfully unlocked the back doors. They swung open, exposing the ambulance's interior in its entirety. Everything was precisely as I had observed through the window. A patient on the gurney, shrouded by a sheet, monitoring equipment actively engaged. As I looked closer, certain details emerged that sent a shiver down my spine. The cardiac monitor displayed a normal sinus rhythm, a steady heart rate of 72 beats per minute. The pulse oximeter indicated an oxygen saturation of 98%. The blood pressure reading showed 118/76. All vital signs appeared perfectly normal. Yet, strikingly, no one was attending to the patient. The ambulance was completely empty, except for the shrouded figure on the gurney. James cautiously entered the ambulance, taking care not to disturb any potential evidence, and I followed him inside. The interior carried the familiar sense of an ambulance: disinfectant, plastic, and the distinct aroma of medical equipment. Everything suggested a routine patient transport in progress. except for the glaring absence of a crew. James reached for the sheet covering the patient. "We need to identify them," he stated, "and ensure they're stable." He pulled back the sheet from the head. For a moment, neither of us could quite comprehend what our eyes were registering. The face revealed belonged to a man who appeared to be in his early 30s, with brown hair and a noticeable tattoo on his neck. His eyes were closed, and his expression was serene, yet I recognized him immediately. "James," I whispered. "That's the patient from the parking garage, the one the security guard said he saw." James stared at the man, then glanced at me, his face etched with disbelief. "That's impossible. There was no patient at the parking garage. We searched for 20 minutes. "I know," I replied, "but look at the description. Early 30s, brown hair, tattoo on the neck. That's precisely what the guard told us." I extended my hand and carefully touched the patient's exposed hand. It was warm. I felt for a radial pulse, and there it was, strong and regular, perfectly matching the 72 beats per minute displayed on the monitor. This was a real person, alive, breathing, with a pulse and normal vitals. But from where had he come? Who had set up all this sophisticated equipment? And why was he here in a stolen ambulance at 4 a.m. in a deserted parking lot? James tried to rouse him with verbal commands, then a sternal rub. Nothing. The patient remained unresponsive, without a flinch, a grimace, or any reaction at all. "Check his pockets for ID," Sergeant Martinez called from outside the ambulance. James meticulously searched, discovering a wallet in the patient's back pocket. He opened it and produced a Washington State driver's license. The name on the license read, "David Anthony Mercer, born April 15, 1989, residing at 8847 Stone Avenue, North Seattle, Washington, 98103. The officer who had run the name returned to Sergeant Martinez, and I overheard him relaying information that visibly altered her expression. She then approached the ambulance. "David Mercer was reported missing 6 days ago, on October 1st, she informed us. "Filed by his girlfriend." She stated he left his apartment around 10 p.m., intending to go for a walk, and never returned. His phone went straight to voicemail. No contact for 6 days. This man had been missing for almost a week, and now he lay unconscious in a stolen ambulance, connected to a professional medical monitoring setup. I was examining the I-5 setup, 2 lines running, one with normal saline, and the other with what appeared to be a secondary medication infusion. I checked the label on the secondary bag. It was propofol, a potent sedative commonly used for procedural sedation. "James," I stated. "He's being actively sedated. Someone set up a propofol drip." This was extremely unusual. Propofol required constant monitoring because it carried a significant risk of suppressing breathing and blood pressure. Yet David Mercer was not intubated. He was breathing independently, with supplemental oxygen delivered via a nasal cannula. This situation made absolutely no medical sense. James was checking the cardiac monitor's memory. According to this, monitoring started approximately 45 minutes ago at 3:18 a.m. This time frame aligned perfectly with when the ambulance had been stolen from Harborview. Someone had taken the rig, brought David Mercer here, meticulously set up all the equipment, and then vanished. I noticed something else critically important. The propofol drip rate was set high, far too high for long-term sedation. At this rapid rate, the medication would deplete in less than an hour. And when it did, David would inevitably begin to awaken. "We need to transport him," I urged. "Get him to a hospital where they can safely wake him up." Martinez nodded in agreement. "Agreed. But this ambulance is a crime scene. I can't let you take it." James immediately radioed dispatch, requesting an additional ambulance for patient transport. Medic 6 arrived approximately 15 minutes later. We meticulously transferred David Mercer from the stolen ambulance to the new one, carefully maintaining all the monitoring equipment and IV lines. I rode in the back with him, while James drove our rig, following us to Harborview. During the transport, I maintained a vigilant watch over the propofol drip. It was getting critically low, nearly empty. The medication would run out before we reached the hospital. True to my prediction, just 3 minutes from Harborview, the bag emptied. The flow of sedatives into his veins ceased. Within 30 seconds, I observed the first subtle indications of returning consciousness. His fingers twitched. His eyes moved beneath closed lids. His breathing pattern shifted, becoming less regular, more responsive. "David," I said, leaning closer. "David, can you hear me? You're in an ambulance. You're safe. Can you open your eyes?" His eyes fluttered, then opened. They were brown, confused, and unfocused. He scanned the ambulance interior with obvious disorientation. Then his gaze settled on me. "Where?" His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Where am I?" "You're in an ambulance heading to the hospital," I explained. "My name is Sarah. I'm a paramedic. David, do you remember what happened to you?" He attempted to sit up, but the gurney straps held him securely. Panic momentarily flashed across his face. "Why am I tied down? Let me up." "It's okay," I reassured him. "These are just safety straps. I'm going to release them." I unbuckled the straps while keeping one hand on his shoulder to steady him. "David, you've been missing for 6 days. Do you remember anything from the past week?" His expression shifted from panic to profound confusion. 6 days? No, that's not possible. I went for a walk. It was Sunday night. He trailed off, his face growing pale. "I remember walking in Discovery Park. There was someone on the trail. They asked if I could help them. Their friend was hurt. I followed them. And then what?" I prompted gently. "I don't know. Everything went dark. And then I was dreaming, I think. Long dreams about being somewhere else, being watched. But I couldn't wake up. I tried to wake up, but couldn't." He looked at me with an escalating sense of horror. "What happened to me? Where have I been?" "We're going to figure that out," I assured him. "The police are involved, but right now, you're safe, and we're taking you to the hospital." He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong for someone who had been sedated for days. "The parking garage. I remember a parking garage, 4th floor. Someone was there, standing over me. I could see them, but couldn't move, couldn't speak. They were watching me." The 4th floor of a parking garage, the Seattle Center garage where the security guard had seen him, or thought he had seen him. "David, when was this? When were you in the parking garage?" "I don't know. Time was weird. Everything was fragmented, but it felt recent, like tonight." We arrived at Harborview. The emergency department was expecting us, and detectives were already waiting. The hospital admitted David for observation and toxicology screening. James and I provided our statements to the police, and finally cleared the scene at 6:47 a.m. Over the next week, I closely followed the case, avidly consuming news reports and maintaining contact with sources in the police department. The investigation uncovered truly disturbing details. David Mercer's toxicology report confirmed high levels of propofol, midazolam, and several other sedatives in his system, clear evidence of being kept unconscious for extended periods. Yet, remarkably, he had no other injuries, no signs of assault, no physical trauma whatsoever. The stolen ambulance yielded almost no forensic evidence. Whoever had used it had worn gloves, meticulously cleaned surfaces, and left no fingerprints or DNA. Most unsettling were the findings from David's apartment. Police discovered it had been entered multiple times during his disappearance. Food had been removed from the refrigerator. Clean clothes had been taken. Someone had maintained access to his life while holding him captive. And they found something else. A small camera cunningly hidden in David's bedroom, disguised as a smoke detector. It had been recording for months, transmitting its feed to an unknown location. Someone had been watching him, studying him, learning his every pattern. The security guard from Seattle Center was interviewed extensively. He remained adamant about what he had seen. David Mercer, unconscious, on the 4th floor of the parking garage. But here's what truly shook me. The garage had surveillance cameras. Police reviewed the footage. The cameras showed the security guard arriving on the 4th floor at 11:24 p.m., shining his flashlight around, calling out, then pulling out his phone to call 911. He was clearly reacting to something, but the cameras unequivocally showed the floor was empty. There was no body. David Mercer wasn't there. Either the guard had hallucinated the entire event, or someone had found a way to make David visible to the naked eye, but completely invisible to cameras. The first option seemed more plausible, yet it still failed to explain how the guard had described David perfectly, including the neck tattoo, hours before we found him. The FBI ultimately took over the investigation, classifying it as an unsolved abduction with the possible involvement of someone with medical training and access to emergency services equipment. David Mercer had no memory of his captivity beyond fragmented dreams and the persistent sensation of being watched. Psychiatrists explained that this was entirely consistent with sedative-induced amnesia, with propofol in particular known to cause retrograde memory loss. But then, 3 weeks after his rescue, something transpired that made the case even stranger. David received a package at his apartment, delivered by standard mail. Inside was a USB drive. When police examined it, they discovered video files, thousands of hours of footage from the hidden camera in his bedroom, meticulously edited into a comprehensive documentation of his life. And there was one additional file, a chilling video message. The communication featured a figure clad in medical scrubs, their face obscured, relaying a message in a digitally manipulated voice. It stated, "You were chosen for observation. Your patterns were optimal. Your routines predictable. You provided valuable data. The study is concluded. You will not be contacted again." This is not a threat. This is notification that you have been released from observation. Others remain under study. Do not attempt to identify them. Do not attempt to locate us. Except that you were selected, observed, and released. Some subjects are less fortunate. The video concluded abruptly. The FBI's analysis proved inconclusive. The filming location appeared generic, offering no specific clues. The voice alteration prevented any identification, and the digital footprint of the USB drive dissolved into nothingness. David Mercer was subsequently placed in witness protection, relocated to an undisclosed location. The case remains open, though devoid of active leads. That particular shift frequently occupies my thoughts. I often recall discovering David within that stolen ambulance, meticulously maintained with perfect medical care, akin to a specimen. The security guard's observation, something the cameras failed to capture, lingers in my mind. Most disturbing is the message on the USB drive, implying that others are still under investigation. The truly haunting aspect isn't what transpired, but its chilling implications. Someone possessing extensive medical knowledge, resources, and unwavering patience is systematically observing individuals, abducting them, keeping them sedated for study, and then returning them. The pivotal questions remain: why? For what ultimate purpose? The suggestion that other subjects remain under observation and that David was merely one participant in a broader study deprives me of sleep. How many others are there? What criteria dictate subject selection? What determines who is released and who faces a less fortunate outcome? Having served as a paramedic for 11 years, I've witnessed death in all its forms, trauma beyond description, and human suffering capable of breaking the strongest individuals. Yet this particular case, a calculated, methodical violation of an individual's autonomy, this clinical approach to abduction and observation, instills a terror in me that random violence never has. Random violence, after all, is chaotic, emotional, and, in its own way, understandable. This, however, was none of those things. It was systematic, patient, and singularly purposeful. Whoever orchestrated David Mercer's abduction meticulously planned it for months, executed it flawlessly, and vanished without a trace, completely unpunished. And they persist, still watching, still studying, still selecting subjects. I now find myself scrutinizing patients differently, wondering if any of them might also be under observation. I notice unfamiliar vehicles parked near my apartment. I compulsively check my smoke detectors, and a rational conviction settling in that I'll uncover a hidden camera. James and I continue our work together, responding to calls across Seattle. We no longer speak of that night, but I sense that it weighs heavily on him, too. I see it in the heightened care with which he now inspects the back of our ambulance. It's evident in the way he tenses when we respond to Discovery Park, and in how his hand lingers on the lock of the drug box, ensuring its security. This, above all, is what haunts me most about that shift. Not the lost time in David Mercer's life, not the elaborate medical setup within the stolen ambulance, not even the chilling message on the USB drive. It's the profound certainty that we stumbled upon something far more vast than a singular abduction, something organized and ongoing, something that treats people as mere research subjects, as data points to be observed and catalogued. David Mercer was chosen because his patterns were optimal and his routines predictable. This description applies to most of us. We are all potentially subjects in someone's study. That ambulance didn't just transport a patient, it returned a specimen that had outlived its research value. And somewhere out there, in another stolen ambulance or an unmarked van or a clinical facility we will never locate, someone else is strapped to a gurney, kept unconscious, being studied, being maintained until they too are either released or become one of the less fortunate ones the message described. After 11 years as a paramedic, I have learned that the most terrifying emergencies are not the ones we respond to directly. They are the ones that unfold in silence, in secret, with clinical precision. These are the emergencies where someone in medical scrubs holds all the power, and the patient never even realizes they are a patient at all. That is precisely what I discovered in that empty ambulance at Discovery Park. Not merely David Mercer, but the undeniable proof that some nightmares wear stethoscopes and speak in calm, professional voices while they transform people into specimens. And they are still out there, still operating, still selecting their next subject. Perhaps that next subject is you. Perhaps you will never know until you awaken, strapped to a gurney, 6 days vanished, with no recollection of where you've been or what was done to you while you slept. This is the case that truly haunts me, not for what we witnessed, but for its profound implications. We are all just potential data, all just subjects awaiting selection. And when they come for you, they will do so with perfect medical care, keeping you alive and comfortable while they study you like an insect under glass. This is what truly haunts me about that shift. The realization that sometimes the ambulance isn't there to save you. Occasionally, its purpose is to convey you to a destination considerably more dreadful than your current one.